The night was heavy, thick with a silence that felt wrong. Streetlights flickered as if uncertain about illuminating the cul-de-sac, casting jagged shadows across the freshly paved roads. A faint hum of distant traffic was the only reminder that the world outside still existed. Inside the suburban fortress of Whitmore Estates, every house looked perfect: manicured lawns, polished windows, and cars gleaming under artificial moonlight. But perfection, as Ryan Callahan had learned, was just a mask. Ryan had always known his neighborhood was a controlled environment, a showcase for HOA rules taken to fanatical extremes. But he hadn't expected violence. Not like this. Not that night. The call came at 9:47 p.m. His wife, Lauren Callahan, had been outside inspecting a mailbox installation, a minor HOA infraction, when it happened. She had been cornered, assaulted, punched by men claiming authority, wearing dark jackets with forged HOA security badges. The sounds of struggle, muffled but unmistakable, still rang in Ryan's mind. By the time he reached her, bruises blooming across her face and fury flashing in her eyes, he realized the nightmare wasn't just about intimidation, it was about power, corruption, and people who believed they could control life and death in their perfect little streets. Ryan, however, was no ordinary husband. A Navy SEAL with years of clandestine operations behind enemy lines, he had spent his life facing danger, deception, and violence. What these men didn't know was that by punching his wife, they had just activated a storm they could not survive. The sun had barely begun to rise over Whitmore Estates when Ryan's SUV roared down the empty streets. The crisp morning air bit at his skin, but the heat inside his body from the previous night's fury was far greater. He replayed the scene over and over: Lauren's scream, the sudden swing of a fist, the way the men had laughed as they tried to assert dominance over someone they assumed was weak. Lauren sat silently beside him, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the passing houses. Ryan's gaze flickered to her every few seconds, taking in the swelling bruise forming over her cheekbone. He felt a pulse of rage at what the world had tried to do to her, and a cold calculation for how he would respond. "I'm fine," she said finally, her voice steady, almost defiant. They didn't scare me." Ryan clenched the steering wheel. "They're going to pay for this," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "And not just a slap on the wrist. I mean them gone. Permanently." Lauren turned to look at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips despite the purple shadow on her face. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Ryan nodded slowly. "Once or twice. Nothing I couldn't handle. But this is personal." By the time they reached his home, the adrenaline in Ryan's body had sharpened into a razor-edged focus. He immediately began gathering intel. Security footage from neighborhood entrances, digital records of HOA complaints, lists of personnel, every scrap of data became a weapon in his mind. He worked like a man possessed, methodical, precise, and utterly relentless. The Callahan's home office became a command center. Monitors displayed live camera feeds from every corner of the estate. Digital maps, GPS trackers, and social media profiles of the HOA security team filled the screens. Ryan's fingers flew over the keyboard, uncovering names, patterns, and weaknesses. He traced ownership of the fake badges back to a man named Gerald Crane, a former ex-cop with a criminal record and a taste for power. Lauren watched him, a mix of awe and fear in her eyes. "Ryan, you're going to go after them?" He didn't look up. "I already am. By tonight, they'll know that Whitmore Estates isn't theirs to terrorize." Hours later, Ryan made his first move. Under the cover of early evening, he approached the HOA's headquarters, a nondescript office building with the faint buzz of security cameras and panic in its fluorescent lights. He knew the men inside were dangerous, but he also knew their arrogance made them predictable. Posing as a delivery contractor with access authorization, Ryan slipped past the initial checkpoints with a combination of charm, deception, and an unwavering presence of command. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the faint scent of fear. The men who had assaulted Lauren were there, laughing and boasting about their authority, showing off the forged badges as if they were symbols of godlike power. Ryan observed them, cataloging each face, memorizing the layout, and anticipating their movements. When he finally confronted Gerald Crane in his office, it was silent at first. Crane looked up, surprised, thinking a mere civilian had somehow bypassed his defenses. Ryan didn't give him a chance to speak. Within moments, he had neutralized Crane's personal security with non-lethal precision, using a combination of pressure points and submission holds learned through years of SEAL training. "Where's the rest of your team?" Ryan asked, his voice calm but cold as ice. Crane smirked, though it faltered as he realized Ryan was not bluffing. "You have no idea what you're up against," he said. Ryan leaned in, eyes unblinking. "I do. I've fought worse. And they hit my wife. That's the difference." The confrontation was brief but decisive. By the time the fake HOA enforcers realized what was happening, Ryan had already dismantled their command structure, severing communication lines, locking doors, and isolating them one by one. He moved like a shadow, blending training and instinct into lethal efficiency without leaving permanent casualties, yet ensuring each man would never harm anyone again. By the time the sun set, Gerald Crane and his crew were defeated, humiliated, and completely powerless. The empire of fear they had built on intimidation and fake authority crumbled like fragile glass. Ryan stepped outside, his body bruised and battered from the fight, but his mind clear and focused. Lauren met him on the driveway, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "You did it," she said softly. Ryan pulled her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. "No," he whispered. "We did it. Together." And in that moment, as the streetlights flickered and the cul-de-sac returned to its deceptive calm, Ryan realized this was only the beginning. The battle had been won, yes, but in a world where corruption hides behind neat lawns and polite smiles, vigilance was a lifelong war. And he was ready. The morning after the takedown, Whitmore Estates looked the same: tidy lawns, silent streets, and the faint scent of freshly cut grass lingering in the air. But Ryan Callahan knew better. Perfection here was a facade, a polished mask hiding the rot beneath. He stood on his porch, coffee in hand, scanning the cul-de-sac with the hawk-like awareness honed over years of Navy SEAL operations. Every house, every hedge, every glimmering window could conceal an enemy or an informant. Lauren emerged from the garage, bruised but determined, a resolve in her step that mirrored Ryan's own. "Do you think that's it?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Ryan shook his head. "Crane's gone, but the network is bigger. These guys didn't build this overnight. Someone else is pulling strings." He paused, letting the weight of that thought settle. "And they're smart. Smart enough to hide behind paperwork, legal loopholes, authority no one questions." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "So we keep digging." Over the next several days, the Callahans became a quiet storm of intelligence gathering. Ryan transformed their home into a tactical command center. Every HOA filing, bank transaction, and even seemingly innocent neighborhood email was scrutinized. Lauren, using her background in cybersecurity, helped uncover subtle traces of manipulation, shell companies, secret bank accounts, and falsified property violations used as leverage against residents. It didn't take long for a pattern to emerge. The fake HOA enforcers weren't rogue, they were part of a meticulously orchestrated operation designed to exploit homeowners under the guise of community safety. Residents who questioned the rules mysteriously faced harassment, fines, or threats. Families were intimidated, neighbors pitted against each other, all to maintain an illusion of absolute control. Ryan's jaw tightened as he reviewed the evidence. "This isn't just Crane," he muttered. "This is systemic. And it's vicious." One evening, a soft chime from their laptop broke the silence. Lauren leaned over, her eyes widening. "Ryan, you need to see this." On the screen was a live feed from one of the HOA's administrative offices, an encrypted camera feed they hadn't noticed before. The footage revealed a meeting in progress, suited men and women poring over documents, laughing as they plotted new ways to enforce their power, unaware they were being watched. Ryan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Time to escalate," he said. Over the next 48 hours, Ryan executed a precision strike plan. He didn't move recklessly, every action was calculated to dismantle the operation without endangering innocents. First, he neutralized the inner circle, isolating their communications and intercepting orders before they could reach their enforcers. He used his SEAL training to predict behaviors, set traps, and exploit weaknesses that only someone with battlefield experience could see. Meanwhile, Lauren worked behind the scenes, planting digital breadcrumbs, intercepting emails, and creating controlled leaks that exposed the HOA's corruption. Their dual assault, physical and digital, slowly eroded the empire Crane had helped build. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous it became. Ryan received anonymous threats on encrypted lines, taunting messages that tested his patience and his nerve. One message read simply, "You think you're untouchable? You're next." Ryan's response was calm, almost clinical. "Let them try. They don't know who they're dealing with." Then came the day when the HOA tried to strike back directly. Late in the afternoon, a team of enforcers ambushed Ryan and Lauren while they were returning from a supply run. Black SUVs blocked the driveway, men in tactical gear leaping out with weapons drawn. Lauren reacted instantly, pulling Ryan behind the car for cover. "We walked right into it," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Ryan assessed the situation in a heartbeat. The men were confident, but predictable, trained, perhaps, but not experienced. Using hand signals and precise movements, Ryan neutralized the first wave, disarming 2 enforcers and knocking them unconscious without firing a shot. Lauren moved with him, agile and composed, using improvised barriers and surveillance knowledge to keep them one step ahead. The confrontation escalated into the driveway, a ballet of violence and strategy. By the time the last man tried to rush them, Ryan had adapted, leading him into a trap that left him pinned under the weight of his own momentum. The SUVs were abandoned, the enforcers incapacitated, and Whitmore Estate streets were quiet again, at least for the moment. Breathing heavily, Ryan turned to Lauren. "This isn't over. They're just getting started." Lauren nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then we finish it before they can." That night, they sat together in the dim glow of their home office, piecing together the final threads of the HOA's hidden network. Ryan's eyes were tired but focused. They've been laundering power through the legal system, using fear as currency. But fear has a weakness: exposure. Lauren leaned close. "So we expose them. Publicly." Ryan nodded. "Exactly. We take their empire and turn it into a warning for anyone who thinks they can abuse authority." In the following days, they prepared a meticulous dossier, evidence of fraud, intimidation, and criminal activity. They gathered testimonies from residents too afraid to speak out, anonymized to protect them from retaliation. Each document, each video, each email was a nail in the coffin of the HOA's lies. As they compiled the final evidence, Ryan felt a surge of satisfaction, not just for revenge, but for justice. The network had underestimated him. They had assumed hitting his wife would intimidate him, that a Navy SEAL husband would cower. But the assault had ignited something far stronger than anger, a precise, unstoppable drive to dismantle every part of the corrupt operation. When the dossier was complete, Ryan and Lauren scheduled a press conference, coordinating with local law enforcement and investigative journalists. They knew this would be the moment to strike publicly, to ensure the HOA's network could never recover. As dawn approached the day of exposure, Ryan looked at Lauren, seeing in her the same fierce determination that had fueled him since the beginning. "You ready?" he asked. She smiled, despite the lingering bruises. "More than ever." And together, they stepped into the sunlight, ready to bring the full weight of truth crashing down on the empire of lies that had terrorized their community for far too long. The morning of reckoning arrived like a storm rolling over Whitmore Estates. Dark clouds marred the horizon, winds twisting through the streets with an eerie intensity, as if the neighborhood itself sensed the collapse to come. Ryan Callahan stood on the steps of his house, crisp dossier in hand, watching residents trickle from their homes, curiosity mixing with fear in their eyes. Lauren joined him, her bruised face set in determined calm. Today wasn't just about vengeance, it was about justice. Inside their home office, the lights flickered as screens displayed live feeds from cameras Ryan had secretly installed throughout the estate. Every angle had been considered, every escape route, every potential counterattack accounted for. He tapped a tablet, and a secure video conference with investigative journalists and local law enforcement sprang to life. On the other side, skeptical but intrigued faces appeared, reporters hungry for the truth, officers ready to act. "This is it," Ryan said, his voice low and commanding. "We've got the evidence, the witnesses, and the digital proof. It's time to end this." Lauren placed a hand on his arm. "They won't go quietly." Ryan smirked faintly, a shadow of the SEAL who had faced ambushes and gunfire across the globe. "Neither will we." The press conference began in the estate's community hall, a building once used to project civility and order, now a stage for exposure. Cameras rolled, microphones captured every word, and residents filled the room, some curious, some emboldened by the Callahan's courage. Ryan presented the dossier methodically: bank records, emails, falsified HOA violations, video of the fake enforcers assaulting residents, including the footage of Lauren's own attack. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Every carefully constructed lie, every act of intimidation, every forged badge was laid bare. Gerald Crane and his inner circle, realizing they had underestimated the couple, watched from a hidden office, powerless to intervene. Ryan's voice rang clear. "Whitmore Estates has been governed by fear masquerading as authority. People have been threatened, humiliated, and attacked under the guise of community standards. This stops now." A hand raised from the back. It was Mrs. Hargrove, a longtime resident who had lived in silence for years. Her voice trembled but carried unwavering strength. I've seen what they did to families, to neighbors. And no one listened. But today, thanks to you, we finally have a chance." Lauren stepped forward, her own voice steady and resolute. "We will not allow abuse of power to hide behind polite smiles, manicured lawns, or fake badges. Today, the truth is visible. And there is no going back." The aftermath was immediate. Local authorities swarmed the HOA's offices, confiscating records, seizing assets, and detaining those responsible for orchestrating the network of fear. Crane and his lieutenants were arrested on charges ranging from assault and fraud to intimidation and conspiracy. Public exposure ensured they could not manipulate the system from behind bars. Whitmore Estates shook with the revelation. Residents, previously paralyzed by fear, began reclaiming their streets, questioning rules, and confronting lingering abuses. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like a community instead of a prison. But the true victory for Ryan and Lauren wasn't just legal, it was personal. Standing together on the Callahan's porch that evening, watching the sunset bleed across the sky, Ryan wrapped an arm around Lauren's shoulders. "We did more than stop them," he said softly. "We reminded everyone that courage, truth, and love are stronger than fear and lies." Lauren leaned into him, feeling the weight of what they'd endured lift slightly in the calm of victory. "It wasn't just you," she said. "It was us. Together." Ryan nodded, eyes scanning the now quiet cul-de-sac. "And together, we'll make sure this never happens again. Not here, not anywhere." In the following weeks, Whitmore Estates underwent a transformation. New, transparent leadership replaced the corrupt HOA. Residents were empowered to participate in decisions, and the enforcers who had once ruled with fear were gone, their influence obliterated. Community events returned, laughter echoed through the streets, and the sense of safety, a true, unmanufactured safety, was restored. Even Crane, now facing justice in court, could not deny the meticulous, unstoppable strategy that Ryan and Lauren had executed. Their combination of skill, courage, and unwavering dedication had dismantled a corrupt empire from the inside out. The message was clear: no amount of deception or intimidation could withstand the precision of truth and the force of righteous fury. On a quiet evening, long after the chaos had subsided, Ryan and Lauren walked hand in hand down the cul-de-sac. Children played, neighbors chatted, and the world seemed finally, authentically peaceful. Lauren stopped and turned to Ryan, eyes reflecting gratitude and pride. "We've done more than fight them," she said softly. "We've changed the neighborhood. And maybe, we've changed ourselves, too." Ryan smiled, pulling her close. "We've reminded everyone that no one, and I mean no one, should ever think they can harm the people we love without consequence." As they stood together, the sun dipping below the horizon, the Callahans felt an unparalleled sense of closure. The empire of fear that had dominated Whitmore Estates for years was gone. The streets were safe again. The truth had won. And in the quiet aftermath, Ryan and Lauren knew that while challenges would arise, no force could ever break the bond they had forged through fire, through fear, and through unyielding love. Whitmore Estates was free. And the couple who had saved it had become legends, not just for their skill and courage, but for their unwavering belief that even in the darkest neighborhoods, justice could prevail.